Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Okay, now let's start with the different biochemical cycles that exist in the nature. We had so far understood the different kinds of natural resources that exist. What are they? What are their importance? As well as what are the factors which are responsible for causing pollution or degradation of these natural resources. Now, when we talk about the nature as a whole, the nature has a perfect balance. It tries to maintain a perfect balance of the natural resources that are available. Now, we will study about the different biochemical cycles that exist in and around us, thereby trying to maintain a balance of the natural resources that are available. The cycling of chemicals between the biological and the zoological world is called biochemical cycle. Cycling means it is a cyclic order. It is a balance that is maintained between the biological, that is the life, and the zoological, that is the abiotic factors. These two worlds, when the living organisms and the non-living organisms interaction, the cyclic dependence of the living organism and the non-living organisms amongst themselves is termed as biochemical cycle. Now, in this biochemical cycles, we are going to learn different kinds of cycles which are very, very important for the existence of life. The biotic and abiotic components of the biosphere constantly interact through biogeochemical cycles. Now, why biogeochemical cycles? Because it is the biological, that is the life, and geo means the non-living or the abiotic factors. During these interactions, there is a transfer of nutrients between the living organisms and the non-living environment. So we find that there is always an interaction, there is always a transfer of nutrients from the abiotic factor to the biotic factor and biotic factor to the abiotic factor. So there is an integral dependence of these two components amongst themselves. The four important geochemical or biochemical cycles are water cycle, nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, and oxygen cycle. So these are four important cycles, biochemical cycles, which are of utmost importance for maintaining the balance in the nature. Now, let us study one by one and in detail. The first one comes with the water cycle. Now we know that water is an abiotic component and it is one of the natural resources which is the most important part for the existence of life on earth. And it is believed that the existence of life or the beginning, the very first life began in the cradle of water. Now, what is water cycle? Water cycle basically means a cyclic order in which there are basic functions of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Now, this is a diagram which explains the entire process of water cycle. First, let me explain you in words and then we will come back with the explanation of the diagram. The water cycle involves various steps like evaporation, transpiration, condensation, and precipitation. Now, it is a cycle which involves all these steps. Now, evaporation and transpiration are responsible for the contribution of water vapor into the atmosphere. Now, why water vapor is important? Because it is the water vapor which will condense to form clouds, and these clouds will come down in the form of precipitation. Now, when the water bodies are heated during the day, water enters the atmosphere as water vapor by the process of evaporation. So, all the water bodies, whether it is sea, ocean, river, lake, pond, any water body would contribute to the evaporation by the heating of the water bodies. So, we know by the process of evaporation, these water bodies gets heated up, the water gets converted into water vapor and thus converts into the water vapor into the atmosphere. There is another way in which water evaporates into the atmosphere. This happens through transpiration. Now let me tell you what is transpiration. Transpiration means the loss of water vapor by plants. We know that the leaves of the plants have got stomata, and through the stomata the excess of water is being released into the atmosphere in the form of vapor, and this is called transpiration. So evaporation and transpiration both together contributes to the water vapor present in the atmosphere. The water vapor in the atmosphere changes to water droplets and collects to form clouds, and this is called as condensation. This is the second step, that this water vapor rises up, goes to a higher altitude, they cool down, and then they start condensing into water droplets, and thus this process is known as condensation. Air currents move the clouds formed by condensation and carry them over the land, where they break into rain, snow or fog, and we call it as precipitation. When these water droplets becomes very heavy, they come down to the surface of earth in the form of precipitation. Now that precipitation can be as rainfall, snowfall, sleet, hail, so on and so forth. So this cyclic order, that is the process of evaporation, and transpiration contributes to the water vapor in the atmosphere. Now this water vapor then condenses due to condensation to form clouds, and then these clouds comes down when they become heavy in the form of precipitation. Now once this water is added into the surface of the earth, again they get evaporated, and this process carries on, and thus this is termed as water cycle. So here you can see, due to evapotranspiration, that means evaporation from the water bodies and evaporation due to the release of water vapor from the plants, adds to the atmosphere, it goes to the higher altitude, there it condenses. After it condenses, it comes down in the form of rainfall, and thus we call it as precipitation. In hilly areas, because the temperature is low, so these water droplets converts itself into ice, and thus they fall down in the form of snow. So this cyclic order is known as water cycle, which tends to balance the amount of water that is present, that is the natural resource water that is present on the earth. So this water cycle is responsible for maintaining the balance of water on the earth.